welcome. This event supported by Imperial College London and also our Energy Futures Lab. And so hopefully we're going to give you a bit of a rundown of what Imperial Racing Green does, what it means to the university, and also get some interesting talks from our team principals who are amazing students and great team leaders of their respective teams. So it's going to be a wonderful event. So the kind of itinerary of today is I'm going to give you a welcome introduction. I'm Jeff Barry, I'm a senior teaching fellow, recently joined Imperial Racing Green, and I've been kind of mostly focusing on design manufacturing aspects and project management for the team. So I'm just going to give you a quick introduction and rundown. Then I'm going to be followed by Greg Offer, who is a senior lecturer and has had a lot more experience than me in Imperial Racing Green. And then we'll pass on to our student team principals for both respective teams, the former student team and the Shelley Marathon. And then we'll have a quick Q&A session before we enjoy some refreshments in the concourse, and then we'll move into the main foyer to have a look at the vehicles. So welcome to Imperial College London, located in sunny South Kensington. And it's a wonderful campus university. We've got probably the most impressive client face of all the Russell Group universities. And this is the only green patch left on our campus. So that's where most of the students congregate. And thankfully, the spring has hit and we can enjoy some spring weather. But also we have very cultural neighbours. If you turn to your left, you have the Royal Albert Hall. And then on the right, we have the V&A Museum, the Naturalist Museum, as well as the Science Museum. So we're surrounded by creativity and culture, and it's not a boring place to be in any sense. But also, with that creativity and art around us, we are very inspired and very innovative. So you may have noticed on the main foyer, we also have an exhibition for the Imperial College Advanced Hackspace as part of our Entrepreneurship Week. So innovation, creativity, inspiration is at the heart of what we do at Imperial College London. And that embeds itself into what our students do. So instead of running a demonstration lab for fluid mechanics or the understanding of Bernoulli's equation, we get our students to prototype a hovercraft and race them in our concourse. And for the understanding of machine components and understanding of transmissions, we get them to build their own e-scooter prototypes and race them around campus. So that team working, team building and challenge is what we do at the heart of mechanical engineering, and it embodies itself into our team projects. So what are our aims and objectives? And this is the core aims and objectives for the Imperial Racing Green team for the former student, the Eco Marathon and the Zephyr bike team, is to deliver vehicles with competition and event-winning potential, to develop cutting-edge technology driven from impactful research generated from Imperial College London, to inspire the next generation of engineers, to follow the next generation through, and also to be innovative and innovate future-relevant technology in the field of electric vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles. So I'm going to move you on to my colleague Greg, who's going to talk to you about a history of Imperial Green Racing, and hopefully for any of the alumni in the audience, you'll shed a tear of nostalgia as he goes through. So thank you very much, Greg. You got one.
So most of you know me. Actually, anybody from this team doesn't know me. This was before my time. So I've been involved in Imperial Racing Green since 2006, when the green aspect first entered into the equation. But this was so in terms of the pedigree, the race team pedigree at Imperial College London, it spans back to the beginning of Formula Student. And this is the earliest evidence of a vehicle team that we could find. So this was from 2001 and 2003, when the efforts were mostly focused around internal combustion engine vehicles. We then, the university has been involved in Formula Student, as I said, since the beginning. The earlier entries were credible, were good. There was quite a lot of activity and involvement. There's even some posters out, I think, that may be put back up on the foyer of various prizes that were won at the time. And then we fast forward through a couple of years and we come to one of the successful vehicles since my involvement. So this was the last petrol combustion engine vehicle, and there's some guys from the audience who were chief engineer of that vehicle and took it to competition and saw it do pretty well until the clutch burnt out in the middle of the endurance event. So, you know, motorsport is a harsh mistress, and for want of a clutch disc, then we could have done an awful lot better than this in that year. So, but it was an excellent vehicle. It was really well designed, and really could have done a lot better. So that actually lives on through the current generation of vehicles. The chassis design of the latest vehicle is still inspired by the chassis design of this vehicle. It's an iteration of it. If we come back to where the green starts off, so Imperial Racing was running in parallel with Imperial Racing Green for a number of years. 2006 was when I first got involved, and it was started by a group of 7 students who were, I think they were struggling to see why they were doing engineering, and they came to see myself and one of my colleagues, Ralph Clegg, who isn't here, but some of you will remember, and essentially said, we want to do something new. We want to work on these new technologies that are coming through. We want to work on a hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicle of some kind. And then that coincided, fortunately, with a competition. Some Dutch guys who set up a competition called Formula Zero, where they got 6 university teams from around the world to construct hydrogen fuel cell powered go-karts. So that's what we found ourselves doing, and by 2008 we were racing in the world's first hydrogen fuel cell series in Rotterdam, which was a great event. It was great fun. We all went over, and we ended up staying in some very dodgy accommodation in the docks of Rotterdam, but it was great fun. And the practice event was in some massive hangar, again in the docks of Rotterdam, and then the actual event was on just below the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam. So a fantastic venue. We did very well. It was, again, motorsport is a harsh mistress. We won in the finals, but because we were only in the runners-up final, because we in the heats we hadn't. We'd gone into the third, fourth place runoff. So even though in the final we had the fastest time, we still only came third, which was very peculiar. But anyway, that's how the rules were written that we all signed up for. But essentially, ours was the only go-kart which didn't break down on the track, and that was why we did so well. We then re-raced. We developed a second generation of this go-kart and raced in 2009 and the team spent a few weeks traveling around Europe, which was great fun. And then we switched our efforts to Formula Student. And actually in this year, this was one of a couple of years when Imperial Racing Green was racing at the same time as Imperial Racing. In 2013, the 2 teams merged. The department made the decision that it was easier, it was better for the teams to invest all the resources in one team rather than try and support 2 moving forward. So this was the first successful battery electric vehicle that we made, which was testing at Dunsfold in March 2011. These are about 500,000 laptop cells packaged in 2 side pods of a vehicle, so 500 cells or more. And then, sorry, this is the wrong way around. This one was before that one. So this was the first unsuccessful electric vehicle, which didn't get through scrutineering. So this was actually a plug-in hybrid, a fuel cell plug-in hybrid. So a number of the students who were involved in this year, which was a disappointing year because we didn't get through scrutineering, but actually one of the most important lessons that the students in this year learned, which is that you often learn more from failure than from success. And the students in this year were so determined to prove themselves that they went off and did this. So a spin-off sister project called Racing Green Endurance, where they were so determined to prove that they could do it that they went off and designed essentially a supercar based upon a radical SR8 Supersport, worked with the company to redesign the chassis, put about 0.5 ton of batteries in there to give it a range of 400 kilometers, and then built the car within 8 months, and then over the remaining period of the year, 4 months, drove 26,000 kilometers from northern Alaska to the southern tip of Argentina. So a truly spectacular achievement for the students from that year, and an example of what our engineering students are capable of. So we fast forward back to IAG 04, which was the car you saw on the Dunsfold test track. This competed in Formula Student, getting through scrutineering and coming 5th overall in the, at the time, Class 1A. The year after this, Class 1A disappeared and the alternatively fueled vehicles were racing head-to-head with the combustion engine vehicles in a single race series. And it is still, as far as I know, the only race series that the Formula SAE, the Formula Student family of race series, is still the only race series in the world where any technology can race against each other. So it's quite unique in that way, and you can really see how the technologies are different when you compare them against each other head to head. So we also have a sister project, the motorbike, which was run by one of my colleagues, Sean Crofton, until he retired last year, and then it was embraced as part of the Imperial Racing Green family. So we've had quite a lot of success with this. So actually getting an electric motorbike to the Isle of Man and getting it to even be capable of driving around the Isle of Man track is a spectacular achievement for a team of undergraduate students. This one didn't quite finish a lap of the island, but then fast forwarding to 2013, we actually finished 7th. And this is a substantial achievement to actually finish the Isle of Man mountain lap and actually post a time on the scoreboard, considering that the winning team is a professional motorsport team which in that year had a budget of millions of dollars. So this is university teams competing against actual professional motorsport teams. We don't compete in the Isle of Man anymore. We're still working on the motorbike, but the reason we don't compete is because the competition has just moved on so much more that the professional teams are now running budgets of tens of millions, and there's no way that a university team can compete. So we're looking at exploring what else we can do with the electric motorbike moving forward. Moving into more recent times, 2013 EV2, which is the vehicle that we'll be discussing today, won the design prize a long while ago. Particular innovation in the battery pack, which is undergraduate students working on and designing and building and manufacturing a 350 volt 20 amp hour automotive grade battery pack, which is extremely dangerous and required, a high level of engineering skills and quality. So when I tell some colleagues at other universities that we have third-year undergraduates working on battery packs at this scale, they are very, very surprised and impressed. So this is that car down in the pit garage after a couple of years of iteration, and I will now hand over to the teams to continue the presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Hugo. I'm the team principal for the Formula Student team here at Imperial. Here's just a quick picture of our pit garage with the Formula Student car in the foreground and the Shellacre Marathon car, which Ashin's going to talk about following me as well. So currently we have two cars sort of in the works. We've got EV2, which is our Class 1 entry for this year. So that's the car which we're going to hopefully race on track at Silverstone in July, which I'll talk briefly about in a minute. And we've also got EV3, which is sort of the prototype car, which is being designed this year to be entered into Class 2, which should take over the following year in 2018 to become our Class 1 entry as well. This is just a bit of an overview of sort of the Formula Student events. There's about 160 teams at the UK event from all over Europe and the rest of the world, as far as India and places like that. So these are the other teams we compete with. As Greg was saying, the majority of those teams are combustion powered, but sort of increasingly as time's going on, more teams are switching to electric power. So that's sort of part of the reason why we sort of try and invest time in electric vehicles, because the industry now is going more and more to electric powertrains. We sort of feel that our research and our building of our cars is more relevant to the way the industry is sort of going at the moment. If I can, I'm not quite sure how to make this play. We've got a quick video of there we go. So this is just a quick overview of the lap at Formula Student. This is our combustion car, ICO6, doing a sprint lap at Formula Student. that's just a little snapshot of the sprint event at Formula Student. At the event itself in July, there's several events that the cars are tested on. So there's a sprint event, an endurance event as well, which is like a 30-minute endurance race. And there are some static events as well as obviously the design prize, which I'll come to our design entry in a moment. This is just a quick technical overview of our current Class 1 entry EV2. The sort of philosophy behind this car is sort of reliability and simplicity, really. They're the guiding principles. So it's a chain-driven MRAX 228 powered electric vehicle. As Greg said, the battery was designed in-house by a group of students at Imperial as well, which I think was a big role in us winning the design prize in 2013. So at the time, that was a cutting-edge battery, so a real technical achievement. This is the chassis with no bodywork on it. The car is out in the main foyer as well. So if after the talk you'd like to go and have a look, you're more than welcome to. So it's a space frame chassis. Our Class 2 vehicle EV3 is going to be a hybrid monocoque and space frame design, which I'll come on to a little bit later. So we're trying to sort of develop the technology on from this chassis, which is essentially sort of a development on the ICO6 car. And then hopefully next year we'll make another step to a hybrid chassis. So this is just another overview of sort of the main parts of the car. So the accumulator is the battery in there. That's sort of the heart of the car, and the motor control and everything else. So with the sort of increased complexity that comes with designing an electric powertrain vehicle, especially when the technology is quite new, mechanically the car's been tried to be kept sort of as simple and reliable as possible. So EV3 is the Class 2 entry for this year. This is our hybrid chassis. So the philosophy behind this is to make a step with the chassis to a monocoque, save some weight and have a stiffer chassis, but also act as sort of like a development car. It's going to be made out of aluminium honeycomb panels, which is sort of a proof of concept of the monocoque design, so that in the future, looking beyond 2018, we could look at potentially a carbon fibre option as well, which would be even lighter again. The powertrain in this car is going to be carried over from EV2, so sort of a incremental step over from the previous car, with the potential to, in sort of years beyond, in 2018 and beyond, improve the powertrain, potentially looking at in-hub motors, hence why we're switching to smaller 10-inch wheels, which can give you a big performance step. All the big money European teams tend to use in-hub motors, and that can have crazy torque vectoring and stuff like that. So we're looking to sort of look into that from next year and beyond. And this is the intermediate step in between, effectively. This is some of the research I think I've skipped one. This is some of the research we've been doing. When you make a monocoque chassis, there's a lot of very stringent regulations in Formula Student. So you have to prove that the monocoque designs are at least equivalent to the space frame. So for those interested, this is a few snapshots of some of the testing we've had to do. So these are the panels. These top two pictures are the panels that we're going to be making the cars out of. The top left one's a carbon fibre panel, so we've done some research already into that, sort of looking at the feasibility of using that going on from beyond next year's event. But this year, like I say, we're using the aluminium panels, which are the ones in the top right there. And so this is testing just to show that they're at least equivalent to the steel space frame ones. And they're actually really interesting. They're amazing panels. They're very lightweight. They're just two very thin skins with a honeycomb in the middle, which is very lightweight. But they still have incredible stiffness, and they perform better than those steel tubes in the bending tests and all the other tests we did, despite the fact they're a lot lighter. So we're looking forward to getting the chassis built and sort of hopefully seeing that step in performance with the lightweighting. And there's just one more slide with some of the bonding that we've been doing as well. Again, if you're interested in the technical side of it, all of the suspension and everything is mounted to these bonded parts, yeah, from the testing we've managed to do, we've managed to make bonds that are actually stronger than the panels themselves. So yeah, quite interesting. I'll hand over to Oshin now, who's going to talk about the Shelley Marathon. So yeah.
Cheers. So we're a bit of a different vehicle as opposed to racing for performance. So for example, sprint laps. we're an efficiency vehicle, so it's, you know, how far can you go with as little fuel as possible, which is obviously quite a future-looking challenge. So Imperial's got a bit of a history with various efficiency vehicles, somewhat less in performance. So as mentioned earlier, there was the Racing Green Endurance that did the Pan American Highway, so that's 26,000 kilometers, an electric vehicle. And that was battery. And previously, there has been one team from Imperial that has entered the Shalika Marathon. It last entered in 2000 though, so it's been quite a while. However, so we started last academic year, so summer of 2015, this sort of group of us were like, you know what, we want to enter this. We wanted to showcase some of the research work that's been done at Imperial, so especially in the powertrain. There's been some really good intellectual property coming out of Energy Future Lab, for example. And also get more undergraduate students interested in future powertrain research in general, because obviously it's quite an emergent field. So we started and we realised it was a bit of an uphill struggle initially. Department wasn't convinced that 2 race teams was the way to go, but our academic supervisors fought for us. So we didn't have a regular workspace, so we were working in a general workspace and couldn't leave anything out. So a couple hours work, have to tidy everything away. So you spent as long setting up as you do working. And unfortunately, we didn't have the resources to build a new aeroshell. So this is actually the same aeroshell that was built in 1994 and last entered in 2000. And we were kindly donated it by one of the people who had been involved in that team and is still an academic here now, actually. And it had been sitting in their shed in Wales for 15 years. So needed a bit of love. So we polished it up, fixed it up, made a few small adjustments. And then we started working on what needs to go in it. So I was lead powertrain last year from the conception. So I was tasked with building an entire powertrain from scratch to go into this thing. And as you can see, so the entire powertrain has to be housed behind that bulkhead that you can see. So not a lot of room. But we managed it. There was some trip-ups along the way. So we really wanted to demonstrate a new hybrid system that had been developed here a couple of years earlier. So it's segmented passive hybrid. So this is a fuel cell supercapacitor hybrid vehicle. And the advantage of that is fuel cells, while very energy dense, are not very power dense. So you need a very large fuel cell when you need to accelerate, or you need something to give you that little bit of extra power when you want to accelerate. And secondly, they don't respond very quickly. So if you put your foot down, it's going to be a couple seconds before a fuel cell really gives you the power. So with supercapacitors, you get the power nice and quickly, and you can get a lot more power for a short period of time. So it's got an average power of about 200 watts, which isn't a lot, but it's got a peak power of about a kilowatt, just from adding those supercaps. And then segmenting it, so splitting up the fuel cell, hopefully preserves the life of the fuel cell a lot longer, because it helps correct any imbalances. So while we were building that, we were also building this chassis. So this is a steel space frame. We wanted to start with titanium, but we were encouraged by wiser and cooler heads that maybe we should start with steel and work our way up. So it's a steel space frame, although it has a carbon fiber rod down the middle as a spine to save some weight. So you see the much thicker bar in the middle. Oh, no. Much thicker bar in the middle is carbon fiber, saving us a couple kilos. And yeah, so we welded that up. So this is welded up, and it's got a steel mock-up where the carbon fiber is going to be. And you can see our first attempt out of cardboard to make sure it fits in the shell. So obviously, the shell being from 1994, we had no computer models of it. So we had to scan it using a bunch of open source software and try and design something that would fit in. But it works. Very, very few modifications to the shell required. And then this is a race. So about 6 months later, as you can see, it's quite packed in the back with all the powertrain. So this is our motor controller, and you probably can't quite see it, but this in here is our fuel cell. So it's not very big. These are little BMX wheels. So they're only about 20 inches diameter. And so we had a bit of trouble, actually. So we were planning on going with this segmented system that I mentioned earlier. And we were trying to use this proprietary technology of fuel cells built on PCBs, because they're a little bit more rugged than graphite, hopefully a little bit lighter. Unfortunately, they hadn't been scaled up before we tested them, and it turns out when you scale them up, they've got some thermal problems, because PCBs obviously are made of plastic and just store the heat, so it kind of overheated quite a lot. So unfortunately, about 2 days before race, we had to buy this fuel cell, and we had to rebuild the entire powertrain in the space of a couple days to accommodate that, which was a challenge. We got a few sleepless nights on that. But we managed to get through scrutineering and get on track in our first year. So this is us on track. As you can see, the shell polished up a little bit nicely. Unfortunately, then there was a small problem. And after a couple of corners, we didn't have under voltage protection. And because of all the work we'd had to do to fit that new fuel cell in, unfortunately, we took out some of our telemetry. And the driver accelerated a bit too hard for a bit too long, and the car kind of quietly turned itself off, which is unfortunate. And because of all the problems we'd had, this was actually on the last day of the race, so we didn't have time to fix it and go back, unfortunately. But we learned from our mistakes, and we're quite proud of sort of passing scrutineering and getting on track, with only 4 of us really working for most of the year in general. So this year, we're making some upgrades. So steel chassis I mentioned earlier, we want to replace that. So another bit of really nice research that's been done here recently was in using carbon fiber rod chassis. And now usually there, you don't save much weight, because you have to fit them together with CNC'd lugs, which are solid metal. But by printing the metal with direct laser metal sintering, we can hollow them out, put a lattice in them, and our chassis is incredibly light. It's about 1/3 of the weight of this one. You can see a mock-up of it with plastic lugs in the vehicle at the moment out in the main foyer. We've also got new steering, new motor controller we're all working on, and lots of various bits of research coming in. And so we've now got nearly 30 students working on the vehicle, who have most of them completely in their own free time, and those who are doing it as part of their course, were keen and selected at the beginning of the year. And there were some competitions. We had to select the students we wanted. And so the team's grown immensely this year, and we're hoping to get a good result at this year's race at the end of May. So yeah, cheers.
Okay. So I think all of us will probably come to stand and ask any questions anyone may have about Imperial Racing Green, or any questions to team principals. So anyone, this is a typical lecture for me. I ask if anyone's got any questions, and they just kind of look at me like startled deer. But someone is confident and has a question. Do you need a microphone? Are you okay? Can you shout? Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you. The thing that fascinates me, especially about electric cars, is the battery, and how you're going to advance the batteries to give sufficient power. Formula E seems to have a great problem with it. They keep changing their specification each year, and we had a demonstration here a couple of years ago, I seem to remember, which is very interesting. And I thought by now they may have improved the battery technology, but it's very heavy, takes up a lot of space, and I just wonder, are you attracting any sponsorship for developing a battery?
Good question. I think that might be a question for Greg, who's far more advanced than me in battery technology.
So actually, the cells in EV2 were sponsored by Johnson Matthey Battery Systems. They are commercially available cells, so they actually donated half the cash to purchase those cells. And the same is true for the motorbike, actually. So we do get sponsorship. So that's one of many companies that have sponsored us over the years. The actual battery technology in the car which was developed 4 years ago now, was, is pretty much state of the art in terms of compared to what most of the automotive and motorsport industries are doing. The next generation, the motorbike, has actually been where the battery pack development within Imperial Racing Green has advanced. So the car was pretty much was the 6th battery pack that undergraduates have built in this university. The motorbike is the 7th battery pack. There's members of that team here now who can talk a bit more about it. Sophie over there helped design this generation. And the main advance that we made when we migrated from the Formula Student vehicle to the motorbike was in the Formula Student vehicle, because it's a single event vehicle, and all it has to do is complete an endurance event, which is about 35-40 minutes long. Actually, there's no thermal management system, because from an engineering point of view, that's the optimum. So the thermal mass of the cells is sufficient to allow them to heat up before they get too hot by the end of the race. We did a lot of calculations. The students built some quite sophisticated models, which were then validated with experiment to prove that that was the case before we made the battery pack, because we knew once we'd made it, we couldn't retrofit and put a thermal management system in. So the first time we took that battery pack to the test track and we actually ran the vehicle, it was really like fingers crossed moment. We were praying that the pack would not overheat. So thankfully their calculations were correct, and it didn't. Now for the motorbike, we wanted to be able to do long distance events, and therefore that meant, we might be on the motorway and we might want to be able to pull into a service station, recharge the battery pack in half an hour, and then go back out and continue. So there we needed a thermal management system, because we had the scenario that the battery pack would not have time to cool down at the end of each discharge. So what the team did was design a water-cooled thermal management system that could be integrated into the battery pack without increasing the size of the battery pack. So that was the design challenge I set them, which initially seems impossible until you realize that there's a tiny amount of space around the cell tabs where you can fit in, a little bit of a thermal management system. So they ended up designing an innovative tab-cooled thermal management system, which actually then when I went and visited Williams, who make the battery pack for the Formula E, they'd essentially come up with a design that was pretty much identical. So our undergraduates had iterated to the same point as professional engineers in a fully, 10 multi-million-dollar motorsport team. So the battery pack we have in the motorbike is as advanced, I would claim, almost as advanced as the Williams battery pack for the Formula E. So our undergraduates are really really are at the cutting edge of development of these battery packs. Now, clearly, for some applications, those battery packs are still not as good as they need to be and as good as they will be in the decades to come. But, we're at the beginning of the battery electric vehicle revolution. We're where combustion engines were 100 years ago. It's a really exciting phase. And I, for one, I made this decision explicitly with full foreknowledge 6 years ago. I've chosen to work on a technology at the beginning of that exciting transition, not at the end of 100 years of development.
Based on existing technology, has any sort of lateral thinking been taken place to develop an entirely new way of storing power? I mean, so I was saying, you're watching Formula E, I think it's very good racing, but to have to change cars halfway through, it seems to take the guilt off the gingerbread a little bit. When you see what they've done with that technology, is wonderful. We just described it. It needs something else, doesn't it, really?
Yeah. Maybe I'll talk to you over a drink afterwards, because there's lots of different answers to that question, and I don't want to steal. The show.
I think when you think back to combustion engines and the start, I mean, much of Formula One, the history of it was proving grounds, and the technology wasn't advanced. So I think we were in a new paradigm of new technologies, and as events like Formula E get more and more popular, I think you'll see a exponential growth in the technology. And also to your question about sponsors, we're always looking for sponsors. But sadly, on my LinkedIn profile, I'm not quite close enough to Elon Musk, so I need to make more connections, I think. So any other questions? Sorry. Oh. You sure? Okay. Well, we might as well.
I went to the Shell Marathon last year and was very impressed. I think about 120 universities or something were there.
I think last year there was actually 200.
Okay.
They've cut it down this year. They're only allowing 150 in.
Just the question from that is, are the universities cooperating, or is there a certain amount of subterfuge or sabotage going on?
There's certainly no sabotage. So all the teams are comprised of students who are passionate about future powertrains and raising the efficiency of vehicles. So while there is a spirit of friendly competition, there's also a lot of cooperation. So actually, we had some problems with some of our plumbing last year, and we were kindly lent a pressure regulator by a friendly German team, some various adapters by Aston University in Birmingham, and actually also an auxiliary battery by UCL, because ours, we forgot the smart charger for our nickel hydride batteries, which need to be cycled to charge, and we forgot that charger. So our emergency system was dying after about 5 minutes. So there's a lot of cooperation, and it's all friendly competition. There's no
Camaraderie.
exactly,
Yes,
yeah.
camaraderie.
We've all worked very hard on these vehicles. We're all on very little sleep, and everyone knows what everyone else is going through. So actually, this year, for example, I didn't mention it, but we're setting up some projects for the next couple of years of the team, and one of those is building a monocoque. So we're going straight to a carbon fibre monocoque, hopefully, and so we're currently doing aero design on that, and we've actually been given the code that the leading North American team, it was a Canadian team, use. They gave us their CFD code, their computational fluid dynamics code, to test our aero designs. We just emailed them. We were like, we're looking at doing this. We were wondering how you did it, and they just gave us a code. So it's a lot of friendly cooperation.
And just one rider to that is that there's a sort of online polite argument going on between Tesla and Nissan at the moment about what the correct full charge of a battery would be, and it seems that Tesla are actually suggesting 80%, and that you only go to 100% if you want to immediately go on a long journey. And I just wondered whether that's new knowledge or whether it ties in with what you're doing about thermal. I mean, Tesla used this phrase thermal runaway.
So we're not a battery electric vehicle. As I mentioned, we're fuel cell supercapacitor hybrid, which has some benefits. So actually, as I sort of mentioned to your point as well, one of the benefits is your power production and your energy storage are no longer tied up in the same component. So the problem with a battery like a lithium ion, for example, is that the size of the battery gives you both the energy storage and the power production. Whereas in something like a hydrogen fuel cell, the size of the fuel cell gives you the power, and the size of the hydrogen tank gives you the amount of energy you can store, so you can increase the range there. But in terms of the battery charging, I know some of the teams do cycle their batteries previous to going on track. So they have dynamometers that they bring with them, and they cycle them at 80%. But I believe when they go on track, they all charge them to full charge, because you don't want to have... They've calculated the size of their battery quite accurately, obviously, for this race, so that they sort of just make it round, because you don't want to be carrying extra weight. Obviously, batteries are quite heavy. Correct, Mike?
Yeah, so I mean, the answer is relatively simple. If you fully charge to 100%, you incur a slight penalty and some extra degradation. So you don't want to do it too often, so you just do it when you need to. So in fact, the Shell Eco Marathon battery teams are doing exactly the same. When they're just testing in the pit, they're not charging to 100% to preserve the battery life, but then just before the event, they charge it up full, essentially redline the battery, but just before the race, and they don't do it that often. So you should do the same with your car if you have an electric vehicle.
Any other questions? Yeah, we've got someone down the front.
I just wondered how your fuel cell is doing. Is its life okay? Is it lasting?
At the moment it is, because we don't get to use it that much, because unfortunately the cylinders we use in the race are not sold in the UK. So they're not really sold anywhere, because they're designed specifically for Shell, but Bock also, you can get hold of them on the continent, but we have slightly different gas storage rules here. So we can't actually car park test the vehicle very often, so it doesn't get cycled much. So the fuel cell is perfectly alive and happy because it gets very carefully looked after and stored in a box and cared for, and then occasionally gets put in the car like twice a year at the moment. So it's quite happy. Hopefully, and also we're not currently running the segmented system that preserves the lifestyle because we've got this commercial fuel cell, and you can't buy segmented commercial fuel cells. But hopefully we're also working, again, this is a project we're setting up for future years. We're currently building a fuel cell in-house, custom design, so it's segmented, and hopefully that will have a better preserved life. And we will be putting that in a rig in a lab and cycling it for a longer period of time to really prove that this does preserve the life of the fuel cell.
Okay, any other questions? Yep.
Yes, I was wondering in terms of the rolling resistance of the vehicle, how many watts have been expended just to keep the vehicle rolling along the flat?
Which team is that aimed at?
Your one,
mine.
the monocoque, which we were seeing earlier.
So currently, our vehicle, last year our vehicle weighed in at 46 kilograms. Our drive is about 50 kilograms, so weight maybe with some added bits sort of goes up to you've gone way too far back. Okay.
I made a mistake. I was referring to one of the 1994 body shell that you showed.
So yeah, so we've got that body shell, but there's a new chassis in it. So that's not our vehicle. Our current rolling resistance estimates are around 160 watts. Hence, we've got a 200 watt fuel cell because there's unfortunately a large hill in the track this year because they moved to London last year. So before that, they were in Rotterdam, which was nice and flat and a big square track. And now we've got hairpins and hills, which for an efficiency race is possibly a questionable choice. But so we've got a little bit more power to get up that hill, but our current rolling resistance is about 160, 170 watts.
Interesting. Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Yeah, we've got someone else who wants a question. Thank you.
Hi. You were covering the gains to be made in the fuel cell and the batteries and things like that. Is there any efficiency gains you can make through the control system?
Yes, a lot. So, as I mentioned, it's a segmented passive system in this case. So it means it doesn't use a converter. So you can't actively control the power coming from the fuel cell to the supercaps. But you can control the power coming out of that entire system. So for larger, sort of more commercial vehicles that might use hydrogen as a range extender, you would want a converter. But for a smaller vehicle like this, we operate a burn and coast strategy on track. So we accelerate, sort of burn down the voltage in the supercapacitors at about a kilowatt, like I mentioned. So we do that for about 10 seconds, and then we'll coast for about 30 to 40 seconds. So there's a lot of race management techniques that we use, and we're currently also building a dynamometer to optimize and test those. And then in terms of strategy inside the powertrain, like control equipment, we're also putting telemetry in again at the moment because we're quite a new team to optimize that. But with the passive system, you can't actively control the power generation of the fuel cell. All you can do is control when you burn. But the idea is that the supercaps keep the fuel cell in the ohmic region, so it's the most efficient part of a fuel cell power curve is about halfway to a third maybe, and the supercaps keep it there for most of the time, and we make sure that it stays there by burning at the right times.
Cool. Thanks.
Has anyone got any questions for Hugo from the former student team? Yes? Well, because you haven't spoken yet, haven't answered any questions yet, have you? So shall we do former student, then you can ask your question? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I thought I would because no one else has asked yet. Are you guys planning on developing an aero package anytime soon? Not because we're your competitors. Or
this year.
You're our friend.
So EV2 has been worked on for a couple of years. There's no aero package plan for that. EV3 has been developed so that we could fit an aero package in it. At the moment, we haven't got an aero team working on the car, but the suspension, everything's been designed so that it can be tuned to be stiff enough to keep the car flat enough in the corners to fit an aero package to it. Obviously, works slightly differently with a monocoque because there's no external bodywork. So it's been designed so that side pods could be fitted, and you could have wings. You could have a front splitter attached to the nose cone, and there's mounting points for a rear wing. But as yet, there's no aero development planned because we haven't got an aero team working on the car at the moment. Basically, yeah. Hope that sort of answers your question.
Cool, thank you. And you want to ask a question? So
Was there any thoughts in taking the kinetic energy that is used up on the braking and putting it back into the power system?
Yeah. In Formula Student, a lot of teams do that. At the moment, we don't. With our with EV2, which is our Class 1 entry this year, there's no power generation at the moment, regenerative braking, so to speak. I'm not an electrical engineer, but I'm told that it's not like a super duper complicated thing to sort of program in the controller. But we've had like a lot of electrical problems. We're just trying to get the car to work electrically anyway. So at the moment we're focusing on getting all that sorted so we can actually race in July. Like I say, EV3 at the moment, the next generation car, the chassis has been designed, suspension's been designed, and the plan is next year we're going to keep the powertrain. We'll have time to develop the powertrain. So at the moment we're just focusing on chassis and suspension development. Next year we've got like a new electrical team which is bigger than one we had previously. So we're hoping that we can have some slightly more ambitious plans next year, looking at regenerative braking with two-wheel drive, which is what we have at the moment, and then moving forward, because we're going to use 10-inch wheels on the new car, it's easier to sort of retrofit in-hub motors as well. So then you get into the realms of sort of being able to have torque vectoring on each wheel, and that's like a big performance step to where the other teams are. We're way off that yet. That's sort of something planned for the year after next, really.
Okay, I think we're going to ask a question.
It sounds like your control systems are what you're having trouble with. Is that right?
Yeah, largely. Yeah, we've had problems before with EV2's control with the HV and the low voltage control system as well. Yeah.
There's a lot of control systems that are actually being used on UAV systems, that are larger scale UAV systems. They maybe want to look at, because generally if you scale size, proportionate scale stuff, the languages and the energy power control programs that are generally in there also already a set platform, and they also really control the DC motors, brushless DC motors, etc., etc. So that's already established. Arduino, all that kind of thing, language is already there, and the power control platforms can be scaled up. So maybe something you can consider programming and using in the future. Just a suggestion.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting point actually. I hadn't thought of that before. It's a shame our lead electrical engineer's not here actually, because I'm sure we'd be able to talk to you for hours about all of that stuff. Unfortunately, my knowledge of how the motor control is programmed is not great. So yeah, but that I would definitely bring that up with him, because it might be something we haven't looked into yet. Thanks very much. Okay, yeah, please do. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Another aspect you could consider is, there's development on hydrogen cell development at the moment, and whether there's a continual power generation going on with microgeneration and fuel cells with hydrogen generation. So is that something you would consider in terms of longevity when you start getting into the longer races and longer circuits in terms of economy, power, longevity?
Yeah, it's a good point, because there are sort of several technologies available in terms of like electrified powertrains. For Formula Student, the battery electric sort of works pretty well, because you get that instant power. Obviously, for Oshin's project with Eco Marathon, the fuel cell, with not as much sort of instantaneous power is required, the fuel cell is a good option to go for. It's very energy dense, but for Formula Student, I think you'd struggle to maybe make that work, because you haven't got the instantaneous power there. Sorry, do you want to? Yeah, no, please do. Yeah.
So like Hugo mentioned, fuel cells have problems in performance vehicles. You can hybridize them, as I've mentioned previously, to give you that kick in power. But and while they are generally more energy dense systems, obviously Formula Student don't have a hugely long endurance race.
Yeah, it's about half an hour.
So it's not too much problem. But if you were entering other vehicles, other races that have sort of longer times, actually on the scale of a performance vehicle, it's difficult to make a powerful enough fuel cell system that's also energy dense enough, because there's an associated infrastructure around it that you have to build. So it'd be quite difficult to get it powerful enough to be of benefit while also keeping it light enough to still be of benefit and not actually lose you any gain you get just in the added weight.
Yeah, I mean, the way that the Formula Student competition is structured, the endurance event just isn't long enough to justify any hybrid solution, whether that's a fuel cell hybrid or whether it's a combustion engine hybrid. We've actually, over the years, there was a vehicle we developed that we had on the dyno running perfectly, a sweet little Powertrain, which was a series hybrid, a combustion engine supercapacitor hybrid, that was the strangest powertrain you've ever encountered, because at standing, when the vehicle wasn't accelerating, the engine was redlined, because essentially the voltage, the engine was directly connected to the supercaps with no control between them. So the voltage of the supercaps determined the speed of the engine. And when the supercaps was fully charged, the engine was redlining. And then when you started accelerating, you drew down on the energy stored electrically in the supercaps and also mechanically in the inertia of the engine. And so the vehicle sort of went as you accelerated, which was very strange for the driver. We never entered it because the weight penalty from the hybrid made the hybrid was was more efficient than the combustion, but heavier. And the way the points were awarded meant we were penalised. And yet it was less efficient than the battery electric vehicle, but heavier. So it was always the worst of both worlds. And the same would be true of hydrogen fuel cells, but specifically for Formula Student. For different race series, the equation changes.
I know that you can charge capacitors initially and then choose to drive initial charge from capacitors and later deal with the torque through an expanding flywheel. It works on a similar principle to a clutch, expanding clutch.
So City University made a Formula Student hybrid with a flywheel. So all the various teams around, have explored pretty much any technology variant you can imagine. One of the teams has tried it, but unfortunately the rules force you into these two optimized powertrains, which is pure combustion or pure battery electric. We've spoken to the organisers. They just need to increase the distance of the endurance event by about 50%, and then hybrids would actually stand a chance. But until they do that, the team, any sensible team will just choose one of those two options.
Okay, I think we're probably going to close now, and any other questions you have, we have the two team principals. We also have other students involved in Imperial Racing Green and academic supervisors who you can speak to and ask questions. But I think we need to give a massive round of applause to our team principals.